Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from simpleprogrammer.com. So I thought I would do a video today talking about how much things have changed, what my life was like about 7 years ago, specifically September 15th, 2009. So the reason why I want to talk about this is because Facebook gave me this, they do this thing where it sends you like a memory or a picture that you've posted or, you know, from a long time ago. And some of these are kind of interesting, but I got this one maybe like a couple of weeks ago. That was actually probably not a couple weeks ago, it was probably September 15th. And here you can check out the picture here. So this is a picture of me. We'll see if the picture fits in there. You can see me in the back there wearing that burgundy shirt. You can't really tell, but you know, I was definitely overweight there. And this is me working with my team. This is September 5th, 2009. So it's 2016 now. So that is you know, 7 years. Hard to believe. But at that time in my life, what was I doing? Gosh, Simple Programmer didn't exist. The blog was just being created. I might have had created the blog and had like a few posts at that time. In fact, I may not have even had the blog at that point because I remember creating the blog in November. So I don't know if that was, maybe I had like I was almost blogging for a year. Anyway, there was no Simple Programmer company. There was just a blog, if anything. And I didn't have YouTube. There was no YouTube videos. There was no podcast. I'd never been on a podcast, never written a book. I was overweight. So I think in that picture, I was about, I want to say probably about 270 or 280 pounds, not nearly as muscular as I am now. I had, you know, if you know my story, I had been in shape for a large part of my life. I tore my pec when, you know, just, you know, my identity, you know, I did this video on events that change your life, if you're interested in that story. But essentially, I had gotten out of shape and got fat, essentially, right? And I was working in a cubicle as a contractor for this, for the Department of Health and Welfare in Idaho. I was working on this Java project, and I was, you know, it was a good job. I was mentoring people. It was, you know, it was good. It was a good experience for me. But yeah, my life was totally different. You know, I got up every morning and went to work, and I didn't have any kind of fitness routine at that point. I ate a bunch of junk. I wasn't eating one meal a day like I am now. I had very little self-confidence and self-esteem. The self-confidence I did have was more of arrogance. I had not read, I mean, how many books have I read since then? Probably hundreds of books. I was a good programmer, right? And I was probably good at design, and maybe I wasn't a good writer. and yeah, just thinking about my life back then, it was so different, right? I didn't have a child. I was living in Boise, Idaho. You know, gosh, what can I say about my life? It's just totally different, right? Back then, I had no idea. I had no dream, no vision of what I would be doing now. I was doing real estate investment, and I was hoping that in maybe like 10 or 15 years that I would eventually be able to retire. But, you know, that wasn't really something that was on the horizon. I didn't expect that I'd be an entrepreneur working for myself. I had no ambitions of it, no idea. Right, I hadn't even heard of Pluralsight at that point. I don't think maybe I'd heard of them, but I hadn't done any Pluralsight courses. Right, it was just totally different life, totally different. Getting up and going to work every day, and getting in the car, you know, and coming back home from work, and probably, what did I do after work? I watched TV, and maybe I played some video games, and then I began the day again. I didn't have, you know, any of the insight that I have now, or any of the dreams or ambitions that I had now. You know, I wasn't lazy. I definitely had ambition in my career, but it was totally different, right? I can't even imagine living that life anymore, that my life has changed so much. And so why am I telling you this? Because you know, this is in a 7-year time period. My life has totally changed completely. Like that's the other thing is I'm a totally different person than I was at that point. Like you wouldn't even recognize me, not just physically, but in so many ways. The way that I carry myself, what I talk about, what I think about, you know, how I think, what I believe, all of those things change, right? I became, in so many ways, a much more outgoing person. You know, developed my voice and my personality so much more. You know, became a lot more self-confident, and my self-esteem increased. All kinds of things that have just changed. I've overcome my fears. I was a very fearful person back then, right? And somewhat lazy at that point. Like all of these things have drastically changed in my life. Just, you know, you would not recognize me. I'm a completely different person than I was. And that's just 7 years ago. And 7 years might seem like a long time to some of you, but it's really not that long of a time. You know, even if I just go back 3 years, my life has drastically changed. But when you go back to that picture, and 7 years ago, and just how, you know, the situation and everything has changed. Again, the reason why I'm telling you this is because I want you to understand that you're going to have this period, right? I think some of us don't realize that 7 years is going to come, or 5 years, or 10 years, or whatever that time period is, and the choices that you're making now. See, because even back then, I was beginning to make some good choices, right? I started a simple programmer. I started caring more about my career. I think I started switching off the television set, watching it less, and eventually weeding it completely out of my life. I was making these kind of decisions that were going to put me on this path, right? Around that time, right before I left this job, probably near this picture time, I decided to get into shape, right? I started to start running. So those decisions that I made at that point, that determined what happened in the next 7 years. And so wherever you're at right now, just realize that 7 years is going to come, and your life could be totally different if you make good choices now. The choices that you make, the seeds that you plant now are going to determine what your life looks like next year, in 2 years from now, more drastically in 3 or 5 years from now, and in 7 years from now. And what do you want that life to be, right? I mean, I couldn't even imagine how my life is now. I couldn't even imagine or dream of, you know, what has happened in that period of time, but it can. And so your life can change too. You can't even imagine what you're capable of, or how you could change and how you could grow, but you got to get on that path. And that's the thing, you know, that's why this channel, this is why I do this YouTube channel. This is why I don't just, you know, do whatever I feel like doing during the day, but I'm committed to Simple Programmer and to you, is because I want you to be able to experience it. I want you to realize that there are not the limits, the artificial limits that you put on yourself. In that same period of time, those same 7 years, I can tell you that there are people that I know whose lives haven't changed one bit, who are still working the same job, who still look the same except they're older, and who have not changed their personality or their physicality or their mental, you know, their mindset, and they haven't gained made any financial gains either. They're just older. That's it. And that's sad when I think about how much my life has changed, right? And maybe you've been stuck in a rut, but it's time to change it. It's going to take time, but you got to put forth the effort, right? You got to start making these habits, start building habits that are going to change your life, right? I had no idea that these small things that I was doing would add up, and they would eventually completely change my life when I was doing them. But when I look back 7 years ago now, and I look back at that picture, here's that picture one more time, it's so different. Everything is so different. So anyway, you know, I hope you can find some value from that, and you get what I'm saying here. You know, I just thought I'd share this because this was just night and day. The picture doesn't do it justice. I mean, if you knew me back then and you know me now, I'm a totally different person. I'm a completely different person, and I think in a great way, in a positive way. I'm happy with the progression that I've made, and my life has changed completely. So, you know, yours can too. In 5 years, in 5 years, honestly, my life is completely different, and the same thing can happen to you. So start making those choices now, and realize that you're going to be alive in 5 years, you know, hopefully, and what you're doing now is going to determine what that life is like. There was a really good, I'll wrap this up here, but one of the people that I follow who writes some really good blog posts, his name is Tynan. Let's go ahead and link to his site, to tynan.com. And he wrote this blog post about basically like planning for 5 years in the future, about how, like, instead of living for today, living for 5 years, like planning a celebration for 5 years in the future, and really talking about this idea that you should be thinking about what you want your life to look like then, and optimizing your life for, I think he said at the time 2021. Optimize your life for 2021 or whatever. The date doesn't matter so much, but are you optimizing your life for now, or are you optimizing it for 2021 or some point in the future? It's better to optimize for the future, because all of a sudden you can have the perfect life, the quote perfect life then, but you got to start doing those things now. You got to realize that you're going to be around at that time, and you're either going to look back and you're going to say, man, I haven't changed in 5 years, or things were better, that's the worst thing, or you're going to say, wow, look how far I've come. Sometimes it's easy to forget how far you've come, and some of us have already come very far. Some of you have come very far, and you need to keep on going and keep on realizing that you always get to keep on growing. You always get to keep on making good choices and developing new habits that are going to take you to that next level. I couldn't imagine, I was just thinking about with my running, I'm about to go run a half marathon in San Jose this next weekend, and I can't even imagine, I couldn't even imagine running 13 miles before, but now I do 10-mile runs, every other day. And, you just can't imagine what you're capable of until you stretch yourself to get there. So anyway, that's it. I hope you like this video. If you do, subscribe, click the subscribe button. And thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care.